Welcome to the course Data Analysis and Business Intelligence with Tableau, Week 9. In this week, we are going to look at how to do data preparation before loading the data into the worksheet or workbook. And we will look at parameter and set actions. A little recap about what we have learned in week 8 is we have seen what are relationships and the types of relationships we have inside Tableau. And what are the data models? We have looked at single data model, multi-table data models while creating a relationship. We discussed about the differences between relationships versus joins. What is the relationship and how it is different from a join, and where you have to use a join and where you have to use a relationship, etc. We have seen some relationships, we have created some relationships, and we discussed about the physical layer and logical layer inside the relationships. What is a physical layer and what is a logical layer, and how will a Tableau store them whenever you use these physical and logical layers. We looked at different types of relationships we have, like many to many, one to one, or one to many, many to one, etc. We have seen some relationships where the tables are joined with different kinds of relationships. We have discussed about 8 types of R's and the smart aggregations and contextual joins. How will they work whenever we bring up the data with the multi-table data models? We have seen some use cases where these 8 R's are related to and how these 8 R's will behave whenever we do a relationship. And based upon the particular visualization, if we just look at different scenarios, how this will retain or resolve or remain the data and whenever it is in use. And we have discussed with what data will be coming as nulls and what data will be coming as zeros, etc., and how Tableau will perform whenever we use a measure from a different table or a dimension from a different table. We have discussed everything about relationships, smart aggregations, and this 8 R's of semantics. So for this week, our table of contents is how do we do a data prep, and what are the options available. And we have pivot, custom split, hide and hide fields, sampling the data, interactivity, parameter actions, and set actions. So in this week, we are going to discuss about pivot the data before loading, and we will see how we actually pivot the data before loading itself and what are the cases when we will use this pivot data and how the data will look like when you pivot the data, etc. And we will see custom split data before loading. We have already discussed about custom split in the previous classes, but this one is basically even before loading the data into Tableau, how to do a custom split for the main from the main canvas itself. So we will also look at how to hide fields and how to unhide fields whenever you're extracting the data out, how to actually save up the performance, like save up the data, and you can actually hide some fields while extracting. We will discuss about that. We will see how we can do the sampling of the data, like whenever you want to do a sample analysis and you want to look at only the sample of your data set, we will be looking at how to do that sampling of the data. We will look at how the interactivity will be on the dashboards, and we will look at some cases where we will just use this interactivity. And as the last, the two main topics are in the actions. While we did not discuss about this in the previous para actions, we are left with parameter actions and set actions, and that we are going to cover it now, and we will discuss about what they can do and where you have to use them, etc., and how it is actually interactive whenever you're using them. We will see that. So the first topic in this week is pivot. So what is a pivot actually? We actually did pivots in Excel, right? We used pivot tables whenever we are working with Excel. And what pivots will do is they will actually convert crosstab format to columnar format. If you look at the data, whenever you do a pivot, what it does is it kind of aggregates the fields according to the dimensions. If you just look at your Excel sheet, and if you just insert the pivot table for your entire Excel sheet, what does it do? It actually aggregates the values based upon your text values, whatever you have. It aggregates all the numerical values according to the text values. So the same thing we will do in Tableau also, because sometimes your data will come in a way where you have to convert these columns to rows actually, and build some aggregations based upon the rows. So if you see here in this particular diagram, the input they are actually pivoting. That means you're bringing columnar data to this one into aggregation, and you can actually unpivot the data as well. Just unpivot them to set it back. So this is like between the conversion between a crosstab to the columnar format. So it's like changing the data to rows and columns according to the aggregations. So the output will be a table where you can see aggregated values according to the dimensions you use in the pivot. So this one is more suitable when we have a multi-response questions. So that can be one example where you can pivot the data. If your data set contains this multi-response questions, there can be a scenario where you might need to pivot the data for your analysis. The second topic in this data prep is custom split, and we have already seen how custom splits will work, but the custom split, we can do it before loading itself. And how we are going to do that. So what is custom split is if you have a column where you have alphanumeric values, or let's say you have a full name, you want to differentiate the first name and the last name, you're splitting the data, you're splitting that entire word into two different words. Sorry, entire name of whatever data you have inside into two different words, and you will use delimiters to actually separate them. So it's like dividing one value to two different values. The custom split is used in this case scenario. We have it inside Tableau also, like whatever the data is loaded into your worksheet, you can do there as well. But we do have an option of custom split even before loading your data. We will look into how we can do that. We will look into how we can split and how we can custom split again. Just refresh our memory on the custom. So the next topic is a topic based upon the option what we have in extracts. Whenever you click on edit option, there will be a pop-up box is to actually select some different options to do an extract, right? So whenever you do that, you will get this option to actually hide all unused fields. Okay, and this option is to actually while extracting, just hide all your fields which are not in use. So which are not is in use in the sense, if you start your work and you have already developed something and you have used all your columns and whatever data you need into your visualization, so after that, if you extract the entire data in and if you use this hide all unused fields, what Tableau will do is it will only brings up the data whatever you used inside your development part, and all the other fields which are not used will be excluded. This is like filtering out the data. You can call it as an extractor. Let's say you're excluding everything which is not being used. So this one will basically improve your performance as well, because less the data, more the performance. So whenever you're done with all your development part, if you just come back and you're extracting the data again, just do this click icon called hide all unused fields, and which will lower the data and it will improve the performance of your dashboard. So for this hiding and unhiding, this is one more topic. There is an option to actually hide all your fields. It is not like extract you're hiding the fields, but it is like you will have the fields in the data set, but you will not show them to anyone. You can actually hide them at the back end, and this one will come with an option show hidden fields and hide all unused fields. This is not like extracting. We will actually see a practical demo of how to use this, and this one will hide all the fields which are not in use, but it will not exclude them. They will be there at the back end. It's just hide it. That's if you are like if you have too much of data, too much of columns and rows, what you can do is you can hide your fields and work with the data, because the scroll bar will be low, and you can see all the rows and columns at the use. And you can, if you want to just work with a new field in your development path, then you can click on show hidden fields and just work with your data. This is just like a show hide option, but still you will get all your data at the back end. It is just like hiding your content. That's it. So the next one is sampling the data. While extracting, you can actually sample your data. In the sampling of data, this is like you are like unsure of how the data would be like, and if you're just starting with some kind of analysis, what some data analysts or whenever they're doing the analysis, they kind of sample out the data and just go for the analysis, because sampling randomly picks up the rows. If you can even give the numbers, and it will randomly pick up the rows, and you do have an option to select top rows or give a percentage and saying that okay, I need a percentage of 20% out of my 100% of data, like that. You will have options, and we will see that too as well. And this option will sample out the random columns or the top 10 rows in that particular scenario. So sometimes analyzing the data that is stored in crosstab format can be difficult to Tableau for analysis, because we want the data to be in the columnar format, but that will come as a crosstab and it will be difficult for us to do the analysis. So let's take the example of whatever the Excel sheet text files or PDF files. You can pivot your data from crosstab format into columnar format if the data is not suiting well for your analysis. So for example, I just prepared a small data set where we can use this per pivot, because I intentionally changed the rows and columns. Let's take a data set. Let's see the data set has like quarter related data, and it has some numerical value, and I'm seeing a furniture technology office on my sheet, and I don't want my data like this. I actually want my data, I want my furniture technology office coming up according to the quarter, and I want to see them inside the columns, but not like this. So what I will do is I will just pick up my Excel sheet. I will just set up this data source and select the sheet. What I will do is I will just select the columns over here. Whatever columns I wanted to do the pivot, I will just select all the columns. And if you see here, there's an arrow mark coming up. Click on this arrow mark. It's like a drop down, and click on pivot. So what Tableau will do is it will arrange all your technology, furniture and office into a new column. It will create two new columns for text and for the numerical values. If you see here, it created one for the measure value and it created one for the measure name. And this one is showing us furniture, office and technology, and the data over here will be aggregating according to this column. And quarter also. You can see quarter, the pivot value and the pivot number. And if you want to add more data into the pivot, you just have to select a new column, click on this the same drop down menu and say add data to the pivot. You will see a column, because we do not have any column to add to pivot, but if you just click on it, you will see add data to pivot. This is the option you will get whenever there is a new column and you want to add that particular column to the already existing pivot. You just have to click on that arrow mark and say add data to the pivot, and make sure that the pivot columns and values look as expected before you begin your analysis. So this is how Tableau will do a pivot, and if you go to the row, you will get the quarter and the sales according to the pivot values. If you just drag both field names in here, and I want to see the values over here, it will exactly look like this. And this is how this pivot will work whenever you want that fields into your columnar format. What if I do the data like that previously? What if I just take my data like this? If you see here, the furniture, office and technology is coming as a measure value, and if you click on the this furniture value into your view, it will actually sum up everything and it will give me the complete value. If I want to see the quarter value according to that, that can be coming as in a different format. Let's say I want all these things coming up in the dimension and I wanted to use them in my dimension data. That's why I went with the pivot and I just created a pivot table for this entire sheet and made my data useful for the analysis. There will be some cases where you will be just pivoting the data because you wanted them in a different format and they're coming in a different format. And this is like you're pivoting your data. But if you want to unpivot the data, you just have to click on this arrow and say remove pivot. So this will remove all the pivot you have created and it will show you whatever the data is in beforehand, like raw data, whatever you loaded inside. So this is how you actually create the pivots. And when if you have any errors, like there can be cases where red fields in the view and the fields with exclamation points in the data pane, if because the original fields are actually replaced with the new pivot fields, any references to the original fields in the view will no longer work. So in this case, like if you just did not do the pivot and you went and build something and later you came back and you are doing the pivot. Okay, let's do that here itself. Let's unpivot the data, remove the pivot. Let's go to our sheet and use this value. Okay, use this value quarter or something. Yeah, and yeah, I just use this value, right? So I will just go back to my data. Okay, now I don't want my data to look like this. I'm just pivoting the data. I'll say pivot. So whatever value you used inside the furniture is actually not there right now, right? Tableau created a new field and adjusted the fields according to the values inside that whatever field names are. So this one, the furniture column, is not existing right now. This one will show as a red exclamatory mark because the original field is no longer in the pivot data and you already used that in your view. That's why the column is up showing here in this error mark. Because fields to become red in the view also, if you just go to the sheet, you will see a red color. See the field furniture does not exist in the database and you will see a red color pointing out like this and you will also see an exclamatory mark here as well. And you will see null values in the grid because if all the original fields are used in the pivot are removed and there is no value coming up, so you will see this null fields. And pivot appears only when you select two or more columns in the data, whatever it is from, whether it's an Excel, text file, PDF source, etc. It will only come up when you select two or more columns. If using a different source in Tableau desktop, like if you are using Tableau desktop, you can use custom SQL also in the pivot. But yeah, for now, we're just taking the local system. And remember that pivot will come only with two or more values. You can unpivot anytime if you want to. And if you find this error applications like this, like error column values, you can always delete them here. Deleting them here will also remove them in the sheet, whatever you're using inside, right? There will be no value there also. See? So you can run the data like this. And next topic in this data prep is custom split. So we already discussed split and custom split in our previous classes, but we will just refresh the memory, okay? And if you have like string values in your data where it contains multiple units in your information, for example, the first name and the last name of a customer, it can be easier to analyze them if you just split the data into two separate fields, right? So you can just use this split or custom split options in Tableau to separate the values between this column, and you can use a separator or a pattern of values present in this row of field. So we will just connect to practice file because we have the data over there. So new data source, Excel, and I'm connecting to the practice file we have, and I'm dragging full data. So this is the full data we have inside our practice file. So if you just look at this, we have a column called customer name, and this customer name has the first name and the last name. And if you want to separate them, if you want to separate them into two new values, what you have to do is you just have to click on this arrow mark, just this is split. Okay, it's working on it. So if you see here, Tableau has one column with full name, and it has a calculated field. If you see here, this made a calculation. We remember we actually clicked on split. We did not do custom split. We just clicked on split. So what split will do is split will understand that the separator is as a space, and it will split up the data according to the rows it has. If you see here, if you want to look at the calculation, just say edit. And if you see here, this is the split formula for Tableau. So this is splitting of the customer name based upon the space. This is a space. And how many times are you going to split the data? So this one is showing 1. So one time I'm going to split the data, and it is trimming up the values, any front or back spaces or anything more than this formula, it will trim them off. This is the actual formula at the back end, how Tableau will use the split. But if you see here, we have a case where a guy has 3 names. So Darren Van Huff. So if you split the data for this guy, it considers a split, and it will only consider one time split. What it does is it searches for the space, and it gives us the value, first value and the second value. The third value, what happened to the third value? It trimmed it off. We don't have the third value at all. You see here, all the names came up with according to the space, and we have the data coming up in 1 and 2 columns. So most of the guys will have 2 names. So one unlucky guy had the name with 3 words, so it trimmed the name off. So in this case scenario, you have to use the custom splits, and if you want to use this custom split, you just have to click on custom split, and it will ask you for a separator. And in our case scenario, we are using a space as a separator. So it is asking me for the columns, let's say 3, and click on OK. If you see here, we got 3 columns, new columns, and the Darren Van Huff guy has all the words in his name because we gave 3. So this is the case scenario where we go use custom split, and because the data is like that, it all depends upon your data. And if you have a data where you have a different kind of separators, in that case also you cannot use an automatically split option, which is the first option we did. The values which contains the mixed separators, they cannot they cannot use the split option to separate them, and you have to use custom splits. And in this case, we have to create new fields to look at these scenarios. You can always delete the content whatever you generated by just clicking on this arrow and just clicking on delete. Whatever new fields are generated, or even a calculated field, you can actually delete any fields from this arrow, drop down arrow. And we need to remember some pointers whenever we are using this splits and custom fields. The new fields generated from the split and custom fields, we cannot use this value as a key value to join the data tables. You cannot use it in joins. It cannot be a key value, but you can blend the data, but this value cannot be a key value. So, and also the fields generated from this custom split or split cannot be used and pivot, and they are not supported for sets, groups, parameters, and joins. Remember that the fields are generated from a split, that's why they are not supported for this for techniques like sets, groups, parameters, and bins. And to generate like more than 10 fields, you should consider using the already split value to split it again. That's how you will generate a nice accurate data. And if you have like more and more fields to split the data, just split them once and split them again. The already generated content, split them again. These are some pointers you have to remember when you're working with them. And there are actually some issues you might experience whenever you're working with them. So split and custom split options are available only for the fields that are string data types because it needs some content to be split, and these are only supported for string data type. After creating the split or custom split, new fields that are generated can contain null values or no values at all. Like we already saw right now, if we have a case where some person has three names and we just gave three names over here, but it's not mandatory that all the people should have three words inside that, right? So if you see here, the other values coming up with all the other values can be null values because the new field doesn't have the data. And Tableau might use portions of the field's values as separator. So if a portion of a field value is used as a separator, those values no longer appear in the new fields. Let's say, for example, you want to separate a zip code because we have alphanumeric content in that zip code. We can do a custom split on it. And in this case, like zip code will have a new value with only the number. So it only divides a portion of the field sometimes, and this portion gives us the other half but not the front half. This can happen sometimes when you're working with a postal code. This is just an example. This postal code values, it will look up for a separator and might bring up only the other content but removing the before content. So just like some of the troubleshooting option, like troubleshooting scenarios where you come across whenever you're working with the split and custom split.